What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of Fantasy First here at High Stakes Sports Debates. We thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch my video because, you know, this is the only channel where fantasy comes first. And that's like above things like, I don't know, I would probably like, you know, breathing, sex, really good food, fantasy. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, no particular order, but you guys get the notion here. So welcome back to another episode. The Thursday games are tonight, so I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about the games, matchups, maybe some sleeper plays, guys that you should target. And I'm sorry I'm getting this video out a little late. I had a big day of work today, and I'm going to get the Sunday stuff out by Saturday for you guys. So this video is just for the Thursday night game, which is going to be the Denver Broncos going to Arrowhead to play the Kansas City Chiefs. So let's just go with our studs here. Clearly, guys, you used the first-round pick on Jamal Charles. You got to start him. If you were the guy that drafted Travis Kelce and just watched him blow up, you have to start him. This isn't one of those types of deals where, oh, well, I have, like, you know, Eric Ebron or John Carlson. I mean, and I get Ebron just got into the end zone, but this is a stud. Kelce, you have to start him. So he's in your lineup. Those are really the only two Chiefs that I'm locking in. I mean, listen, Jeremy Maclin in the preseason was a stud, and he looks to be decent in PPR. I'm just not too thrilled with that secondary matchup. And listen, there's always the potential that Jeremy Maclin just takes one over the top, only has a couple targets, and one of them is just a big play for a score. But do you feel like that's something Alex Smith would do? I don't think he has a tendency to throw the ball down the field, although at some point you have to try at least. But again, I think Maclin's role in this offense is really to spread things out for Kelce. We saw on that touchdown play against the Houston Texans. It was more of just a nice cross route that he kind of took to the house, a lot of yards after the catch there. So Travis Kelce, you're starting. On the Broncos side, this is where things get interesting. Everybody and their mother was talking about how Peyton Manning looks so terrible, this team looks terrible, and I get it. A lot of you guys after week one, you're probably going to panic, and I don't advise that. We saw what happened with New England last year. Just that offensive line was in total flux, and eventually when they finally got it figured out, we saw the type of fantasy days that Tom Brady had. Listen, I understand that Peyton's physically, you know, he isn't the specimen that he was, big, strong-armed quarterback in the pocket. But we also know that Peyton Manning's a very mental guy. He likes to win with his head. And I think that, you know, his ability to read coverages and having that internal clock and all the things that make Peyton great, being able to look off safeties, that'll still help you in the fantasy production side of things. It just was a bad week. Week one, just getting used to Gary Kubiak's offense. And again, they could still have these struggles tonight. They're going into a hostile environment against a decently good defense. I'm just not sure if, you know, Peyton will be amazing, but it's almost like, you know, I kind of have to start him. Did you use a fourth-round pick, third-round pick? If so, unless you have a really good backup, maybe Carson Palmer against the Bears this week, you happen to scoop him up late. I really don't see any other deeper quarterbacks that you would play over a guy like Peyton Manning. So, as much as I'm hesitant, and keep in mind, be cautious. You might not get the game you're hoping for, but I'm personally going to still trot him out there. I'm going to start Peyton Manning on Thursday night. Talk about the running game now. C.J. Anderson was questionable up until today, but apparently an update states that he will play in tonight's game. He did get 8 targets from Peyton Manning, so if you play in a PPR, that pass game work's going to be there for Anderson. Running the ball, he didn't look that great, but again, this is a good Baltimore defense and an offensive line for the Broncos that's still struggling to find itself. Eventually, they'll find some cohesion on that line, but until then, you just got to hope that the pass game volume can sort of balance out C.J. Anderson a little bit, because I don't see him as that 100-plus yard rusher tonight. I think maybe he rushes for 60 to 70. Maybe he gets into the end zone. But again, a lot of his bread and butter is going to come from Peyton Manning targets, just quick dump offs, just to kind of take a little pressure off Peyton. Me personally, I have C.J. Anderson in a dynasty PPR, and I am starting him. So if that makes you feel any better out there, you've got C.J. Anderson and you're wondering what to do. Maybe you just picked up a Chris Johnson. Maybe you did something like that. I think that I would go ahead and play C.J. Anderson tonight and hope for the best there. Let's talk about the receivers now here with Demaryius Thomas. Listen, we saw, again, him last year. He started slow, but he really took off. We know that game against the Cardinals where he just embarrassed that secondary. I think for over 200 yards and 2 scores, if I'm not mistaken. I have him in my dynasty as well, and I remember looking at my phone like, dude, this guy just put up like 50 points, like legit. So don't panic with Demaryius Thomas. He saw a team high, or a second team high, 11 targets. That's a lot of targeting, especially for your wide receiver 1. So I'm safely trotting him out there. You might not have the 30-point game, but D. Thomas is certainly capable of 6 to 8 catches for 60 to 100 yards, and he could get in the end zone. Again, it's tough. I know the matchup's risky, but unless you got better plays for Sunday, you're kind of obligated to go with Demaryius Thomas. Other wide receiver, Emmanuel Sanders, saw a team-high 12 targets against the Ravens. I'm starting him if he's my wide receiver 1 or 2. I think that he'll see a lot of volume tonight, especially with the Chiefs going to probably try to stop Demaryius Thomas, put more attention over there. You know that Peyton's developed a certain amount of trust with this guy, so I like Emmanuel Sanders as a good spot start here. Okay, and again, you never know what's possible. Again, tough matchup. It's not one that you want to see so early, especially with the week that the Broncos offense had last week. And I think that's what's scaring everybody. It's not so much the matchup, it's how the Broncos looked last week with that Kansas City pass rush, being at home, with that crowd, with that atmosphere. So Payton's going to have to come out, establish a rhythm early, get some rapport with his receivers, get a flow going, get C.J. Anderson, get Ronnie Hillman involved. And I think at that point you might see the Broncos offense start to churn a little bit here. So I'm starting Manning, Anderson, Demaryius Thomas, and Emmanuel Sanders. I'm not starting a Bronco tight end, even if one flukily gets into the end zone. I'm not starting Owen Daniels. I'm not starting Virgil Green. I just don't feel comfortable. So those are the locks for me. You can maybe Ronnie Hillman's maybe a guy I think about as a flex starter. He might catch a couple balls. Again, Anderson's questionable. I think Anderson's still going to get 60 to 65% of the overall work, both the run game and the pass game, or in terms of more targets than Hillman. So I'm feeling safer with Anderson, but if you're in a deeper league, maybe a 16-team league, I think Ronnie Hillman's a viable flex in a PPR that could offer 8 to 10 points, and that's hard to come by from the running back slot in your roster, especially in a 16-man league. So I'll probably trot him out there if I'm in that situation. So looking at some sleepers that could potentially, maybe put up some points in this game. I'm really not seeing a bunch. I think we kind of know the usual suspects here. Maybe the defenses, because, listen, guys, this can be sneakily a defensive game. And if I probably want to own any of those defenses, obviously the sane, logical thing is you want the Chiefs, you want the home defense with that crowd. But I think the Denver defense could have a decent night tonight. Maybe something like 10 points. Maybe Smith throws a pick. Somebody forces a fumble. I mean, do you expect them to just go out and light the scoreboard? Now, I understand they did it against Houston last week, but I don't know. I think maybe the sneaky play here is one of those defenses, but then you get stuck in that situation whereas, well, if I had a bad Thursday night defense matchup, I'm coming into Sunday at a disadvantage, and that's always a bad feeling. So my personal advice is if I can find someone better on Sunday, I'd rather do that. But I think the Kansas City defense and the Denver defense could be sneaky plays tonight. In terms of the offense, Not really seeing anyone that's sneaky. I think Alex Smith could be a decent start. Again, I talked about that in the podcast. If you guys don't know, I go to highstakessportsdebates.wordpress.com. All the sports podcasts will be hosted there, kind of to supplement this video podcast a little bit. I want you guys to have multiple avenues of accessing content whenever you want. So, go ahead and check that out for more info on Alex Smith and how we feel about him. But I have him as a potential QB2 starter. As for the Broncos, I'm not starting Cody Latimer. I'm not starting any little tight end. Even if Peyton goes there, I just feel more safer with the receivers. So I think everyone knows what to expect tonight. The major players for the Broncos are Manning, Thomas, Sanders, and C.J. Anderson, with a deep league flex consideration for Ronnie Hillman. I think with the Chiefs, it's Kelsey and it's Charles. I think that Maclin might struggle against this secondary tonight. I'm not so sure he blows up. If I've got better options, I'm benching Jeremy Maclin, and I'm not going to leave it up to him. Although Andy Reid is creative and he could have the potential to score, if it was me personally, I would probably try to find another option. So that's really it for the Thursday night games, guys. I know this was kind of a short video, but I wanted to dedicate and get you guys content for the Thursday night game specifically, and then Saturday we'll have content for the weekends. Again, you can check out the podcast at highstakessportsdebates.wordpress.com. If you want to access more content, please feel free. Drop me a line, drop me a comment. Find me on Twitter at SportsDebateTom. We're at Instagram now at High Stakes Sports Debates. I want to hear from you guys. Please give me feedback. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you guys stopping by. Saturday we'll have your NFL Week 2. Start sits, the advice for the rest of the National Football League, and it should be fun stuff, guys. So thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll see you next time here on Fantasy First.
High Stakes Sports Debates.